Coming in, yeah.
On today's episode, we speak to Samo Obanda, co-founder of Alternative, an African experience design and technology company that is building brands for the future. We get into the ups and downs of building this business from the ground up. This is On the Up, and this is his story through the lens of Alternative.
Samo, welcome to the show.
That's how it starts.
That's how it starts. And I feel like in many ways this episode is very weird for me, but also very special.
Also for me.
It's very weird and special because it's your story, which in many ways is my story.
It's our phone call.
Yeah.
Any other day. Uh-huh.
But it's also weird because like I'm going to ask you questions
Yes.
that I know the answer to.
Yes. I feel like you should just interview yourself.
Make sure that you give the right answers to our audience because I can easily just edit and
stuff.
just add on top.
No pressure.
Interview myself. Well, that's good. And that in many ways is the best segue for the first question because you're supposed to talk about Alternative.
Yeah.
And that's been like a tough thing ever since we started because we exist in a business carved out from a space that only people who understand it get it.
That's true.
Where me and my mom still doesn't know what I do. And I'm sure your parents as well.
Completely.
So in one take, how do you describe Alternative?
Okay. I think there are multiple ways we could say Alternative. I think on one side, Alternative is a Samo and Akil story. And I think that's why it's so complicated to have a conversation about it. And it's our story, right? Meeting up as friends, as young guys, doing poetry, finding our own passions, creating something, and then that became something in its own way. I think looking back, that's completely different from that time till now. The other side of Alternative is maybe the more functional side, right? I think of Alternative as a cultural catalyst. That's what it is, right? We've existed in different eras of time, whether it was the early 2000s, 2010s, now it's in the 2020s, and people are changing, economies are changing, markets are changing, all of those things are evolving. And I think what Alternative has always been has been this entity that shifts culture in a way where we take brands, we take companies, we take businesses, society, and we bring them closer to creators. We bring them closer to creators to solve things. So in the simplest way, that's what you'd say. So we always, our line is we are a design, experience, and technology company that is building African brands that are relevant for the future. In the simplest way, that's what it is. I hope that's simple. My mom still doesn't understand what that means. So
I hope the audience does.
Yeah.
And it's been 8+ years.
It has been many years.
Officially.
Yes. Which
On
one?
paper.
Which part?
Alternative.
Okay.
On
When we were
paper.
working out of out of Java, or when we were in an office.
Registered.
Okay, cool.
It's been 8
Something of that sort.
8+ years.
Yeah.
Walk us through the journey that started with you quitting your job, and it was a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
We had a meeting
Yeah.
at Java.
Yeah. Which one? Me quitting my job or you quitting your job first?
I think I quit.
And me telling you not to quit your job.
So now, see,
Okay.
I thought I'm the one interviewing.
Okay,
It's
cool.
your story, Samo.
Cool.
Through
Okay.
the lens of Alternative.
The story from my lens is that way. I think everything predates us starting Alternative. I think Alternative was never a decision we made. We didn't sit down and say we're building this thing. We had so many conversations, whether it's when we were living in a house together with Abu and Mehdi and everybody else, and Josh and all the whole squad. And we'd have all these conversations about what we want to change or what we want to do, and we'd look at brands and see opportunities and things like that, and we'd look at global companies, and it felt like all of these individuals out there were doing things that they were passionate about. And you know me, my background is what? I'm an electrical engineer, well, degree-wise, and then a poet, and then, your background also, and then we find ourselves in the poetry world, and we're trying to figure out where we're going. I think the actual story of Alternative starts at that point where You were looking to quit your job because you hated your job, and I was like, no, you need to stay on your job, and one day you told me you've quit. Yeah, and you had this connection, this particular person who seemed they wanted to sell land or something of the sort. And one Sunday we went to meet that person. I was like, let's go and meet them. And you had a deck, worst deck I've ever seen ever. And we met him at Java, and we pitched him, right? And we talked about his brand and everything it could be. And people don't know that, but that's one of the biggest, land selling, companies ever. And, we didn't know what their dynamic was. And in that moment, Monday, he wrote you a check in your name. That's where Alternative started. And I think out of that, we pulled a couple of people we knew who did posters, people we knew who were creatives, people like all of those types of things to solve something. And from the beginning, Alternative's always been about solving. And I think we just kept moving that way. We solved everything else afterwards. We didn't have, whether it was registration, whether it was, an ETR machine, whether it was how taxes are supposed to be done. Nobody ever told us anything. And that's why I said Alternative, someone Akil story.
Yeah, it's true. And if we zero into your story, because your background has been very varied coming into Alternative.
Yeah, and hidden.
And we're about to unravel it.
Okay.
Starting from engineering.
Yeah.
That's your degree.
Yeah.
And then you went into a tech company.
Yes.
And then you at some point were
I was at Google
hacking solutions.
Yes. Yeah.
And then Google. How is there a thread that you can look back
and say
there's an evolution?
Yeah, I think legitimately, when I was in high school, people were filling in what kind of course they wanted to do, and I couldn't fill in what I wanted to do. I don't feel like I found that when I was in high school. And then my dad made this speech to me when Wangari Maathai won, the Nobel Peace Prize. And my dad's a biochemist, he's a professor, he's a biochemist, and he made this speech about how, he'd lecture, I'd get A's and I'd become, a biochemist. Then the next day I saw a newspaper ad and they talked about electrical engineering and I signed up for it. That's legitimately how it happened.
I started.
Yes. So when I got into campus, I think I spent half the time trying. Engineering is, one of my lecturers said that it's a way of thinking, and it stuck with me. That thing was, he said it, and I don't know if he'll never know it, but he's called Dr. Moema, and he said it when I was maybe in fourth year, and he said that particular line, and it really stuck with me. So the whole time I was in engineering, I was trying to get out of it, yet on this other side, the whole world was happening around me, whether it was poetry events, and I felt, poetry is so great because you find yourself, you find your own inner voice. On this other side, you have this structural element coming in. So think of it as the creativity sort of coming in and the structure coming in a way, but you as a person not knowing how you can use it. Then we continue the line of poetry on one side, and on this other side, we go into, the first job. My first job, guys finished campus. Most people the year before, half the guys from UN were hired by Total. I kept having this nightmare of working for Kenya Power, because that was what engineers did, right? That's the path, right? And I went in the complete opposite direction. I got a sales job. It was Tech Today. They sold laptops and phones and whatever it's. But I went in to do more of the, I think you'd call it that, an engineering type product that they had. And it was a sales job, but it was great because you get to meet people, you get to talk, you get to understand why do people make decisions to buy something. And in my very small way, I know that company at some point, wasn't going through the best sort of place. And I remember meeting the, CEO, and I reached out to him separately. I was like, listen, man, I think I know how you can restructure your company. The audacity that I'm this guy from campus who's thinking of telling that guy that. But that evolved, right? So from there, I quit that job, courtesy of Alea Kasam, because Alea was this individual who was creative from the poetry world. We were sort of finding our own selves. We were also in very different places. And, you hype each other in, on message, and we quit. And I remember we quit one day and she came to get me and we left.
Shout out Alea.
Yeah, and Alea is, great sort of like component and point in time. And there's so many individuals who are like points in time, whether it's Alea, whether it's guys like Faraz, like individuals like those who helped us sort of like find our way. And I quit then and I stayed at home, and this is where you come back into the story, however you try and remove it, because I was staying in South Sea in an apartment, with no job whatsoever, and I was just chilling, and I know you always make fun, I had a big beard and everything, and I had my Steve Jobs moment, right? Like when he goes up to the mountain, and he comes back down and he's more zen, okay? And I think that was my moment in terms of that, and I got my job then working for a company that was called Impacts, but I was in the sister company in a weird way that was doing parking systems, and that was incredible because I knew that my boss was this kind of guy who would wake you up in the morning. And no matter what was happening, it would be the weirdest meeting. You could be going to Coca-Cola, but you don't know what you're going to pitch. And I loved that. I loved that energy. I loved being, and I remember the person who hired me said, listen, we needed someone who runs with him. And I did that stint, and then I got into Google. We worked on BebaPay, and in BebaPay, it was the most interesting time because it was the first time that I was managing a ridiculously large group of people, a team in terms of like onboarding and getting things moving. And Google was great. Google is the most scary place you could ever want to work at, because you're in a room with a pack of individuals who are extremely smart, and people move really quickly. Everything feels like it's watching The Social Network, and it's an Aaron Sorkin sort of like movie, and everybody's speaking so quickly. But everything is about solving things. Everything was driven around a vision and a mission. And I think in the path of where we were going, Google was great because in all of those things, I picked something. Whether it was from campus in terms of like the story of being, finding myself, structure, poetry world, whether it was Tech Today and the sales component and just being at the cadre that I was at, whether it was a second level where at, Impacts it was running, it was figuring out things, those business models. I loved the company because there was a structure, you got salaries on time, all of those things, The tiny things. And then when we went into the component of Google, it was mission, vision, purpose, large story, like solving something in the world. Those are companies that are purpose driven. And by the time we went into alternative, all of those things come together. And I think those things become chapters in my life that in many ways what alternative is, it takes all of those things in. At alternative, whether you're small or you're big, all of them matter across. We don't look at your background. You'll have people who are, petroleum engineers and others who are degrees in agriculture. That's legitimately true. Some without, like Akil who refused to finish campus. And then, you need to go back to campus. Then all of those things sort of like come together, right, around this purpose. And this purpose where, yes, we use brands to tell those stories, but in many ways we're writing our own stories through those brands. And I think even through time, it's really changed. We started out from a very marketing point of view, and now we are in this digital transformation universe, brand transformation, changing companies and changing the way people consume, what people know about those companies, how people live. And I think our mission and story is about that. We tying that thread from creator, we will always be creators across, and just writing a different story as we go. I think that's what alternative is, and that's why I said it's a catalyst of culture. Yeah.
Samo, in the many years running this vehicle, like it's been like, and I mentioned it's been 8+. It's been like longer, unregistered.
Yeah.
People, and we came to realize this, and you mentioned it a lot when we were starting, because you get into this business and you think product is what you need.
Yeah.
And if you have the best product, you have a business and it can run and it can sustain itself and it can do all those things. But you later found out that running a business wasn't that. Tell us about that.
I think there's no CEO school or entrepreneur school like locally, right? And I think, growing up, everybody tells you, grow up, become a, dentist or, a doctor, whatever it is you'll become. And the assumption is that this entity already exists and it's been figured out, and you'll just come in and fit in. And I think when we started out Alternative, we assumed that, right? We assumed we would just be these guys who, we would have seats, sofas in the office, and then nobody tells you you'll be sued for breaking other people's backs. Like, this is legitimate, problems that we went through, right? And I think that things that people don't necessarily weigh or give, credence to is, like, for instance, the administration part of things, HR, all of those types of things, finance, taxes, especially when you're dealing with individuals who the government is just looking at you guys and it's like, wow, you guys, you didn't read a book, So I think in so many ways, the way we've evolved over time has really been about finding and understanding all of these things that are on the periphery of everything we want to do. I would love to spend every single day being a creative. The thing that people don't know is that for the creative, there's this other person who's figuring out all the other things, who's making sure that, at the end of the day, hey, you got your salary on time. At the end of the day, the company solved the problem for the client. And I think when you really look at it, there are so many levels of that in building something like Alternative. Alternative is like 20 companies in one, right? We have to think about products, we have to think about services, we have to think about evolving our product, we have to think about our people, growth for our people. You don't interface with one department for a minute. It looks like you don't care about them. All of those things are interconnected in such a way. And I always say, I wish in campus, we spent the first year being taught about the actual, in context of the world we live in, that, you might run your own company. How would you run it? What do you need to know? Rather than doing an MBA afterwards. I feel like that's it. But Alternative has legitimately been an MBA in life. I think that's how I look at it. So in terms of that, there are all of those small things people don't talk about. And I think for us, it has been figuring out how to solve those things. Yeah.
And it's not like anyone gave you money.
No, I mean,
it's a classic bootstrap.
It's a classic bootstrap from working out of Java, from having a client who's a big ass client, sorry if I can say that here, but who's a big client, and they want to see your office and you guys don't have an office. And you're trying to work out of shared workspaces. Those types of things, people don't know about that story. Or working out of an apartment and then figuring out, okay, so we're working out of an apartment, what's our dynamic? Are our women okay in that particular space? Is the toilet sort of okay, we were guys, and then, with time starting to figure out, okay, so our dynamic is changing. We need to be in a workspace. And then in this workspace, we need to look a certain way. We need to have rules. We need to have all of those components. So I think it's bootstrapping in terms of finances, but it's bootstrapping in regards to every single thing. How to manage finances, how to run, how to manage people, how to be fair, compassionate in terms of how you run. How to be clear in terms of your capability and in terms of your vision, and how to be able to create a team that taps into that vision and runs with you, because that's what a company is. It's really individuals who are locked in on your vision and moving with you. So bootstrapping is literally in every single way. If someone told me before we started that that's what you're signing up for, I mean, definitely I think we'd have thought about it a little bit more, right? But nobody ever told us that. Every example of a company we've ever seen, it looks so fluid. It looks so easy. It looks so like everything was put together. It's like they met in some place in the pyramids and they sat down and they wrote the commandments of how they're going to run. In our case, the world slapped us, with boom, this is the direction. So that's been the experience of this.
I remember even the first client we ever signed. It
Who's
took a
the first
while.
client?
because it was Urban Bytes.
Okay.
And
Cool.
like we officially signed because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
previous company was
Yeah.
very informal.
Yeah, we had
Things ran
we
through
had
my
relationships.
bank accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as the first contract we actually signed,
Yeah.
he came back to us and said,
Yeah.
"Come back to me when you have an office.
Yes.
When there's a place
When you
I
guys
can
have-
find you.
Yeah,
When you have an
that's
accountant.
true. Yeah.
Like I like you guys. I like your thoughts, but."
Yeah.
Get some structure before you come back, and I feel like that's part of the story.
I think the story of, and in that particular case for Urban Bytes, the story of Faraz is really, really important. I think anybody who would ever meet Faraz would realize he's one of those guys who is very worldly. He's very tapped into like the world in such an emotional way. Yet he's an individual who runs such a big company, right? An incredibly big company, right? If you eat Urban Bytes, if you've seen Noda, that's what it is. And Faraz was our friend. I mean, Faraz saw what we would do when we were doing poetry events. That was our pitch to him, right? And we brought that world into this. We didn't have a CV for what we were doing, but he listened to us. And I'm forever grateful to like an individual like him and coming across. But in meeting him, one of the things that he said to us is what you said, which is you guys need to have an office, you need to have a company. I remember the first time they asked us for an ETR and I was in town and I was like, where are we gonna get an ETR and what's an ETR? Or what's a seal? Like they sound ridiculous, but they are really tiny things that people don't think about when you create a company. It's a beautiful story. But the back end is a nasty business. And I think looking at companies like him or individuals, across our paths, I think that has helped us. We've sharpened ourselves against some of the biggest companies. And I think whether it's how we comply, whether it's how we run, so many companies look at us and they say, hey, listen, the culture of Alternative, like we love that. I would love to work at a place like Alternative. But it's because we've sharpened ourselves against some of the best and biggest companies that exist locally. And we've brought that into Alternative to become, what it is today.
The business we're in right now, it's a service delivery business. And like one would argue and like go away with it that it's the hardest thing to like crack. And especially currently, because we worked in an era where you had to wake up, go to work, you might have a shitty boss, you'll have to go through it.
True that.
You have like bills to pay, and you'd absorb all those things and go to work because opportunities were exactly that.
Okay.
You had to like work, and that is when we were part of like the workforce and we were employed, and through that journey that you've detailed. But things have changed right now. We see a younger, more agile, very fast workforce, of which opportunities have like ballooned across. Like we have influencers, we have photographers, like everything they do with this digital economy is an opportunity.
Yeah.
You still have to tap into that energy for it to be your workforce.
Yeah.
And then on this other side, whatever you're selling is ideas, it's vision, it's strategy. And those things are very subjective. You might have the best path for a business and someone else might look at it differently. And it becomes like a very unique and tough cocktail that you have to like maneuver through. Help us detail how like you've led Alternative and how you've managed to like maneuver through these challenges.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I really think about it, it's a question about a question about time, it's a question about generation, it's a question about where we are right now. And I think it's very easy to look at it from a micro level, and maybe we could start at it from a macro level. If you look at it from a macro level, we're in an economy that is sort of like in denial of where we are, right? Because the world is changing. Where we exist right now against other countries, the world is moving. It's moving from digital to a new world, right? But are we even keeping up? The reason why that's so important is because by not solving that, then it means then the kind of opportunities that trickle down, whether it is from an education point of view in terms of what you're educated about, whether it is from a business point of view, the type of business you can create, all of those things interconnect. So from a top level, from a top leadership point of view, we're already in denial of where we're supposed to be. When you bring that down levels and levels and levels, and you get to this particular place where we are young guys, we're doing poetry, we're trying to find an opportunity for ourselves, then we create a company. we're building an economy, and in building that economy, you bring in these new individuals who are a lot younger, who are also trying to find themselves. And I think that's what Alternative has done. Alternative has always been a guide, or this guardian, trying to hold these creatives, individuals who are young, who have voices, who are not like the generations before, who want to build something. They want to see value out of it. That's why seeing Sauti Sol put out their album be as successful as they are, for me, is an incredibly great thing, because the music industry is not a music industry. It doesn't exist. It's Sauti Sol, literally, and artists, who are carrying the weight of a whole industry on their shoulders. And I think that's how Alternatives looked at it. But then on this other side, you have the complex component of companies, and these companies are living in a world that's changing and they need to change. Then they look to Alternative to change, to help them evolve, to help them transform. But then the kind of people you need to transform them are these creatives, and we are this individual who's here in the middle. If I was to pick an engineering term, we are this sort of transducer, right? Like we're sort of like changing, from one world to another world. So on this other end, you have companies that need to evolve, need to change, but they have no understanding whatsoever of what they need to do. Legitimately, you need to take companies back to school. A new school, that is what we are, right? Or as the Joker put it, a new school of, a new class of criminals. Like that, you have to take them back there and sort of like start educating them in that way. So on one level, you're looking to educate these companies, but on this other end, there is a certain expectation they have of us to do things at a certain level. So the complexity of being Alternative has been, we translate worlds. On one side, we work with companies and we help them move forward. We help them figure out the new language of the world. And the new language of the world is this new digital world, it's this new technology world. It's shifting every single day. As we try and create roads, other people are trying to get to Mars. That's as bad as it is, right? On this other side, we have creatives who've never worked anywhere in their lives. You lived at home, with your parents or whatever it is, or maybe you didn't. You went to school, you came into a workplace, and then this new workplace needs to allow you to be yourself, but at the same time be able to offer value. And I think that's the complexity of like Alternative, and I think that's the complexity of the universe in itself, where the role we play is that guardian role. On one side, help these creatives and grow them. On this other side, help companies find their way. And in some way, they meet at some point, and that's that cultural catalyst sort of like component, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I look at it, it's a complicated question that you've asked, but in so many ways, there's so many ways you could look at it, and to be honest, not to throw more dirt, but for me, I look at it from leadership from the top. If leadership at the top is not figuring out that, 2020 was one of those years that, in all honesty, we sat around a whole year. We didn't change our education system. Literally, we didn't evolve whatsoever. I've seen countries where teachers go to, homes with, we didn't evolve in any single way. And here we are this year, talking about all this, noise on this other side, but there's a creative economy. The creative economy isn't something that sits in the corner anymore. The creative economy is what we do every single day. As long as you take a phone and you use that phone, you're in the creative economy. As long as you're trying to do a business in a different, new way, that's the creative economy. So, in so many ways, I think we sit in that noise, in helping, in trying to figure out how do you transform, how do we change, how do we do things better, and then on this other side, how do we guard, how do we help, how do we nurture, how do we use the voice of creators to solve society's problems. I think in many ways that's actually what our purpose is. Yeah.
I think it's very well put.
Yeah.
When doing all this, Samo,
Yeah.
there must be like a few moments when like closing shop seemed like such a great idea. When things weren't meeting, like when outside pressure, inside pressure, company, finances, like things just didn't work out. And like taking a tangent and taking a different route seemed like a good idea. Coming from someone who quit his dream job from Google to like run Alternative. Tell us about those moments of struggle.
Those sort of like experiences. I I think there are so many moments, and I think they start from even the beginning, right? I mean, what do we know about running a company, and why are we running a company, right? How do you hire? All of those were questions, right, over time. Is our product right? The product keeps evolving because we live in a digital world. It's not an analog world. It's completely, constantly, frequencies changing. And then you get to this particular point where your product is ahead of the market. And in many ways, you have moments and we can have these conversations where you present something to a client or you pitch something to the client, and at times you need to sort of like calm down. At times you need to like take a step back and just like, okay, so let's do it your way. You'll understand at some point. Like that, those have been components, and I think it's the job we have is a job of pulling. We've never been the ones who have been pulled. We have always been the ones who are pulling the load. And those blows are so many, whether it's this time, whether it's last year. I mean, COVID year, it was a bad year, and especially for us, having to make a decision, to keep our people first, which is one of our values, right? And to keep the team, and to make really hard decisions to keep that team there. And unless you sit in the seat that we sit in, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And I think that those were, like heavy blows that happened. And I think they happen to most businesses and most companies. I think the value that we've had is the fact that we have each other and other people to have conversations with, whether it's our chairman, Eric, to help us sort of like ground and figure out like the hard things that we need to figure out and how to move forward.
Alternative as a company has taken different shapes over the years.
Yeah.
Like you see an evolution every single year.
That's true.
It's mainly born from like one of your biggest fears of us going into like a Kodak moment, where like we wake up tomorrow and we are a dinosaur. That said, like what's the vision and like what should the audience see from Alternative in the next many years? Like what's that ultimate plan?
I think the funny thing is, if I was to talk about Alternative, I'd refer to the show Heroes. The way there's a time traveler and he goes back in time.
Hiro Nakamura.
Yes, and I think that's what we do. I think the vision that we are sort of, putting out right now, what people are seeing right now, whether it's the Start Here show, whether it's the app, whether it's all of the other things, literally, these are things we didn't start yesterday. We started them a couple of years ago, right? Thought-wise, I know like last year when we were mapping out, with you and we picked out our vision board for 2 years ago, all the things we were talking about doing is what we were doing. So I think I can't talk about now. I think right now, like someone just needs to follow Alternative and see the things that we do. And there's a lot of things that we do. We've shifted into this engine that is thinking about digital transformation, and we're building credible technology. I know people, if you're online and you've seen ICL Lion, the new DigiTrust product, that's completely built by Alternative, right? Like from end to end. Whether you're looking at some of those brands that, you're like, okay, where did these guys come from? They're a big deal right now and they're out there, maybe Bifita Gin, and you're wondering what the strategy was. That's Alternative. Whether you're looking at, components in terms of like content and this whole narrative, we started working out with influencers before people ever knew that there was a thing called influencers, right? When whatever would listen to the timeline to realize, is this the right time to trend? Like we did all of those types of things, and I think in so many ways, all of those are a combination of what you see right now. I think what you'll see in the future, in many ways, is that Alternative is taking on challenges that are bigger than they've ever been. We've never been limited by what we see right now. We've never been limited by our current reality. We've always built our own reality. We're Magneto, right? Like we're building the road as we walk. And I think what you will see as we move forward in many ways is, I think that catalyst of culture will always be a thing that we'll be looking to do, whether it is in terms of brands and the evolution of brands, whether it is building products, Aero, people now seeing those types of things and, here they are, whether it is giving creatives a space to be themselves. That's a huge focus for us, right? Be a home. I think Alternative is a home of creators, and I think that's a component you'll see, whether it is building more and more technical products. I mean, we run payment gateways and we build technology. Whether it's all of those things, I think at some point people will look at alternative, and you will have the same conversation when you say the word alternative as you'd say with all the large, big, companies around the world that have, changed the way we do things. And I think that's always been our agenda from the beginning. And I think the vision's still the same in that way.
And if you were given an opportunity as the CEO of the company, those many years back, and you're told this, with the knowledge that you have, and you're told this would be the path, what path would you take?
To be honest, we'd do everything the same way. I believe in that, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I completely believe in what Steve Jobs said, in connect the dots. I don't think you can connect the dots looking forward. I think you connect the dots, looking backwards. And I think you have to go on a path. You have to go on that path, and the more you go on that path, you realize things, you learn, you figure out whatever it is. So if we're starting today, I think we'd build alternative again. I think it would be the same alternative. We might make less mistakes.
Along the way.
Yeah, along the way. I mean, we would, we would, definitely. But I think in so many ways we'd be the same company, because the vision's always been the same. If the vision had changed, then it would be a different scenario. But our story has always been the same story, and the vision has always been that same vision. And I think if we started today, it would be the same story all over again.
Yeah, and I love the story, and thank you for sharing your perspective of which.
Thank you for for letting me interview you.
Which becomes our story in many ways. But I think even for the audience, I think it's important for them to see like the different steps, the different things that come together to build a company. And I think this was very refreshing, and hopefully would be able to have you back for other things where you might be the host.
I'll go back to the Batcave and I'll let you be Batman.
Okay, Alfred.
That's cool.
Cheers.
Yeah. I just wanna win. I just wanna win. Coming in. Yeah. Ay, coming in.
Right about now, we introduce my favorite part of the show, which is quiz time. Samo?
It even has the dance.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so I'm the one who's going first. So I've rebranded your show. Now it's called the On the App Vazas version of your show. So first question.
So it's not quiz.
It's not quiz anymore. Now it's
Vazas.
It's the Vazas, yes. So this is the questions, okay?
You need to go easy, because
the goal for me is for people to know your real allegiances about things. So first question, Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. Who's the best?
You're so petty.
Yeah. Who's the GOAT?
For me, the GOAT is easily...
And don't say Serena Williams.
No, the GOAT in basketball.
Yes.
Easily LeBron.
Yeah.
Because I feel like eventually he's going to end up with a more illustrious career. I think he'll have a more expansive career as opposed to... I think Jordan was Jordan.
Black Jesus. Okay. Second question, Elon Musk versus Steve Jobs. Who's the great?
I would go away from them. I think, like you mentioned, it's a generation thing, and I think I can't do that. I think Steve Jobs had to exist for Elon Musk to
I feel like you're really failing, but let's continue.
I can't.
You can't not have that.
Love them both.
Yes. Third question.
Love them both is not an answer.
Third question, On the App show versus Start Here show.
On the app, easily.
We
are on the app.
Okay.
Yeah,
the next question, which is like a petty one, Kendrick Lamar versus Eminem.
I'd go Kendrick just because he's black.
Not Eminem? This is
Kendrick
new, but it's
black.
on camera, so this is good.
Kendrick is black.
Okay.
I'll
Now,
go
my last question, completely. Cristiano Ronaldo versus Wayne Rooney.
I think this is so nasty, guys. And I'll never.
And I know you love your United people.
I'm not giving you a direct answer. Ronaldo is the GOAT. Rooney is the United GOAT.
Just pettiness.
You're never going to win. Samo, your topic of today
Yeah,
is going to be Sade,
Really?
your love life
Okay.
after your wife. I needed to like say that because
Yes.
she's in attendance.
Yes, thanks for adding that.
And the video will be seen.
Uh-huh.
Are you ready?
Okay, I'll try and answer.
In Sade,
Mhm.
is Sade
Mhm.
in actuality the singer's last name and not her first?
She's called Helen Folashade Adu.
Yeah,
Is that the answer?
Paul. In what year was she born?
I think it's 1959 or 1961. Which one is it?
You'll know. In which country was she born?
She was born in, I think it's the UK. No, it's Nigeria or UK. Or she was born in Nigeria and then they
You
moved to
need
UK.
one answer.
Well, I'll go with UK.
After graduating college,
Mhm.
she started a fashion business
Mhm.
which specialized in which type of clothing?
That's a good question. Okay, that one I don't know. I'm really curious. That one I
pass.
don't know. Yeah.
Before she was part of the group Sade,
Yeah.
the singer was part of a group called Pride.
Yes, she was. Yeah.
Oh, how do you set this question and this answer? Should have done this one. Frankly,
Yes. Uh-huh.
you've just given it
The answers.
good stuff.
Cool stuff.
You'll know the answers
I won, right?
later.
Yeah. Ay, coming in, yeah. Flex, I just wanna win, yeah. Flex, yeah. I just wanna win, I just wanna win. Ay, coming in, yeah. Ay, coming in.